Hello everyone, in this video we'll have a look at control flow. If you have programmed before, then this should look very familiar as they are kind of the same as in other programming languages. If you haven't programmed before, control flow will make our code move into different directions. If you choose value A, for instance, then do this, and if you choose B, then do this. We will also have a look at loopings. Loopings will allow us to iterate over certain things in our code. For instance, show all of the products in our shopping basket, for example. Okay, I think it's time to jump in the code. First, we'll have a look at the if-else statement. So here we are again in Dartpad. Let's just remove this sample code. And we'll start with creating a value which will be fruit in this case. So let's create a string and we'll call it fruit. And in this variable we'll place the value of apple like this. All right. And now we'll start with an if statement. So let's say that if fruit is equal to apple, then we'll say, using the print statement, I like apples. But let's say that the value is different. Then we have the else statement that we can use. And we also have the else if. So let's say that if fruit is not an apple, maybe fruit can be a banana. So let's say else if fruit is equal to banana, then we can write something else. Let's say print I am a big fan of bananas. And let's say that we just want to have like a default outcome of our condition. Then we still have the else statement which we can use, and then we don't need to check anything. So let's say it's not an apple or a banana, then it will end up in the else statement, and then we'll write that is okay too. There we go. So let's run our code. Our code is saying I like apples. So let's say that this would be a banana. Then it's gonna say I'm a big fan of bananas. But let's say that this would be, for instance, a pear. Then it's gonna write that is okay too. So this is the if else that we can use in our code. Dart also supports if statements without curly brackets. How does this look? Let's just remove this code or put it in. Let's just remove it real quick. There we go. And then we're gonna write something like this: if fruit is equal to apple, print I like apples. As you can see, there are no curly braces here, and this will also run just fine. Oh, but of course, we will need to make our fruit an apple, and then it will work. There we go. Okay, now we'll have a look at our first loop. Well, actually 2 loops. We'll have a look at the while loop and the do while loop. To be honest, I haven't used these loops too much in Dart because there are different ways to go through collections of data, but we'll have a look at them anyway just for reference. While and do while loops go over code, and while the condition is true, they'll just keep on going. And if the condition evaluates to false at a certain amount of time, then they will exit and stop running the code in our loop. The difference with a while and a do while loop is that the do while loop will evaluate at the end the condition. Maybe this doesn't really make sense, but let's just have a look at an example and then you will see what I mean. So let's remove this code real quick. We'll start this time with a counter and we'll give it a value of 0. There we go. And then we'll start with the while loop. So we'll just write this keyword while here, while the counter is smaller than 10. So this is our evaluation. While the counter is smaller than 10, it will keep on running our code. Let's now print out something like current amount of apples in my fridge. Let's just stay in the fruit world a little bit, and then we'll print out our counter using this statement. So we can easily include this variable in our print statement. And let's see if this runs okay. So the thing that I did wrong here is that this will keep on running and it's called an infinite loop. So that's not really good. That's not something that you would want. So let me see how I can kill this. As you can see, my browser also doesn't like this. So we'll just refresh the page. Let's go to Dartpod. Okay, and I'm back. So the thing that we had to do here was increase our counter like this, and now run the code. And now you will see that it prints out our print statement and it will increment every time using our counter. We increment with 1 at the end of our while loop, and it will just continue until the value is smaller than 10. So let's now have a look at our do while loop. An interesting thing maybe first is that it stopped here at 9, and that's because it evaluated and it saw that this wasn't equal anymore, and then it just stopped. So let's now first print out maybe a statement here saying that we'll look at the do while loop now. And the do while loop looks like this. We'll start with do, curly braces, there we go. And then we'll print out the same line maybe as we had here. And then we'll do the counter plus plus, and here we should write while counter is smaller or equal to 10, like this. And let's have a look now. And there we go. So because the evaluation of our condition is here at the end, this line was still printed out. So we started here, it started iterating, and then this loop stopped at 9 because this was still equal to this, but 10 obviously is not. And then it moves to this flow, and because the evaluation is at the end of the loop, this print statement was still printed out. So that's why this was still working. So this is the while loop and the do while loop. Now let's look at the for loop. First, we need to initialize a value that will manage the amount of times our loop will iterate. Then our condition, which is evaluated every loop. And then we need to define a modifier that will update our value at every loop. So let's maybe have a look at what I'm saying here. Let's remove this code. And we'll start with the for keyword. And as I said, we need a value that will keep the state or keep the amount of loops that we will do in our code. So let's call this index and we'll give it a value of 0. And then we need to say what our condition will be. So let's say that index will be smaller or equal to 10. And at the end of every looping, we want to increment the index with 1 by doing this. And this is how our for loop looks. So let's print out something like this. Print amount of apples I have in my shopping bag this time. And we'll print out the index here. There we go. And let's run this code. As you can see, it starts with 0, and this is what is printed out here. And every time this loop goes, this will make sure that the value is incremented with 1, and the loop will keep on running until this evaluation is no longer equal. It's not the same. So it was incremented to 10 at the last line here, and then it was equal to 10, so then it stopped running. So that's it for loopings. We looked at the while loop, the do while loop, and the for loop. Now something that I also want to explain are the break and the continue keywords. In some cases, we need to break out of a loop or continue to the next iteration in our loop and skip the rest of our code in that loop. So let's have a look at a code example so this will make more sense. So we'll define a counter again. We'll give it a value of 0 and we'll move back to our while loop. So let's say that counter is smaller than 10. And we'll increment our counter with 1 in the beginning of our loop. There we go. And we'll do an if statement now saying if counter is equal to 4. So when the loop has reached the value of 4 or our counter, then it should break out of the loop. And breaking out of the loop means it will just stop running and it will move on to the next part in your code. Let's say that counter is equal to 2, and then it should continue, and this means it will continue back in the beginning and start all over. It will not run to the next line of code, so I will write a print statement here. Apples in my basket. And we'll print out the counter here. So let's maybe run this code and see what happens. So you will see that it shows 2 lines, apples in my basket, 1 and 3. So what happened to value 2? So it started with 0 and then it went into the loop. It got incremented, so counter is now at 1. It's not equal to 4, so this is not ran. And it's also not equal to 2, so it also didn't go in here. It just printed out this line, apples in my basket, 1. Then it went back to the top and it was incremented again, so now it's 2. So it's not 4, but it is 2. So at this point it will go in here, and because there is a continue keyword here, it will just move back to the top. It will not print out the line. So that's why we don't see the line apples in my basket 2 here. So now we are at 3, and what happens here? It's not 4, it's not 2, so it will print out the line apples in my basket 3, and then it goes back to the top, and then it becomes 4, and then it will break out of the loop. So that's it, that's how this works. Thank you for watching, I hope it was informative, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.